are back on the build phase. I am Mr. Ben, and today, finally, after all of the shipping issues and everything, we're going to talk about the complete box of AEW. So I'm going to sit here until we get through every single card in this box, and I am excited to go ahead and dig right in. So I guess before I do that, we can just take a little bit of a look at the box. This is typically what you expect from a versus box, but the images on this box are not typical versus images. I've done multiple podcasts about how AEW is kind of a weird fit. Even people who are fans of wrestling are talked about how it's kind of a weird fit, but I don't care. At the end of the day, this is a popular IP. It has brought new eyes to Versus, and I'm thrilled to have them here. Even if I feel, I was talking to my friend Joe the other day about building my Billy Butcher deck and about how I wanted to get these cards specifically so I could put Sting into that deck. And we just started laughing. Like, it's such a weird sentence, but I'm happy to say it. I'm excited to get into these cards. So I realize that most of the time when I do these unboxings, the cards are relatively new. They are just coming out. And whereas with AEW, between them coming out at Gen Con and then the shipping delays with Upper Deck changing warehouses, a lot of this stuff is already known information. And that's okay. I still want to do my unboxing because I enjoy doing this stuff. So I do have some maybe less robust takes on these characters than people who have actually got a chance to play with them may have had when they did their unboxings. So, same grain of salt as always. I'm going to read the cards, I'm going to react to them, and I'll do my best to get everything right, but it is what it is. So, let's start. Let's start with the baby faces. So, I guess for anybody who's not familiar with the phony fight business, and when I say the phony fight business, I understand the actors on stage have to have the athleticism and the strength and the agility to pull off the moves in real time in front of us. Just like the people at medieval times have to have the ability to ride a horse in order to pull that off in front of us. The joust, the fight at medieval times is not real. The fight in wrestling is not a real fight, but it is a performance of a fight that requires a lot of athleticism. So if I say the word fake or phony throughout this, no offense is intended to the professional wrestling fans or the sport, the industry of professional wrestling, but I'm sure it's going to slip out every once in a while. So okay, let's dig into Adam Page. So this guy is a babyface affiliated character. The baby faces in professional wrestling are basically the heroes. The heels are the bad guys. So when people are doing good stuff, they're on the heel, the baby face side, and when they suddenly change and become a bad guy out of nowhere, through their own volition and not because a screenwriter told them to. When that happens, that's your heel turn. See, I'm putting some of this research I had to do for wrestling to work already. So, all right, let's dig into Adam Page. He is a 3-4, 6 health, okay stats to start. I mean, I like 6 health. Hangman, any combat, pay a green, put a -1 counter on an enemy character in the combat. That character loses and can't gain keyword and superpowers this combat. That could be potentially big. There's a lot of characters that if you turn off their combat tricks, they get really shut down. Anxious Millennial Cowboy, level up 4. At the start of each enemy turn, Adam Page gains 1 XP. So the drawback here is that you have to be a little bit conservative with him as far as declaring your attacks. You want to make sure that he's face up at the end of your turn. But really the only control that your opponent has over whether or not you're going to level is if they have the combat trick to punish you for declaring a reckless attack. So I like the level up. You're going to get it consistently in 4. There's really no way to make it go any faster, but I think you can pretty much guarantee that he always levels up every time, and that is definitely something we like to see in our main characters. Once he gets to level 2, he becomes a 6-7-6. Still, stats are okay. He has the Hangman power still, so he's still able to neutralize enemy combat powers as well as get that -1 counter onto them. With a 6-7 stat block and the built-in way to reduce enemy stats, I feel pretty okay about that. He also gains Buckshot Lariat. These names are going to kill me. Pay a yellow, daze any number of enemy characters Adam Page could melee attack. So this to me screams flying blockers and big stacks of green counters. This is his way to deal with that nonsense so he can go ahead and get to the main character that's trying to hide in the back row. This main character had a decent showing at Gen Con, if I remember correctly, or maybe I'm conflating it with another event. Maybe it was Ohio. Recently, he has had decent showing in a tournament, although I don't remember exactly which one. And I think that makes sense. He's a very playable guy. He's got the stats that are fine, a pretty good effect in the hangman power, and the buckshot lariat is going to be a way, especially if you build him aggressively. That's going to be your way. You just push through for that last wound and close the game out. So it's a card that has good synergy and a reasonable level up. I'm not surprised that he's seen play in competitive events. Moving on to Chris Jericho. He is a 255. 245 used to be the stat block of death, but I don't know. 255 isn't much better. Floyd the Bat. Chris Jericho starts the game equipped with a baseball bat equipment, and it still counts as part of the 60 cards in your deck. That makes sense. So essentially, this could be phrased at the start of the game, search your deck for a baseball bat and equip it to him. But I like that they just say it's there already, so you don't have a weird, oh, I present my deck. Now I have to search for a card and present my deck again. It's just a little bit more, I feel like that's a nod to making it flow smoother. Judas Effect, level up 2. At the start of your main phase, if both a face and heal supporting character are on your side, Chris Jericho gains 1 XP. This feels like it should be very easy to accomplish. There's 1 drops on both of these teams. There's characters with multiple health on both of these teams. So to get 2 characters of these 2 different teams to stick at the same time is not asking a lot from us, which is good that he can level up quickly because 255 is not a tremendous stat block. Once he levels up, he becomes a 5-9-5. Now, I like that defense a lot more. A nice big butt to kind of offset how punchable he was at level 1. He has Le Champion, while Chris Jericho has the AWE World Championship belt equipped. It doesn't get KO'd while he's stunned. And Walls of Jericho. Any combat, pay a red, choose an exhausted enemy character in the combat, and it can't strike this combat. I think to really make full our analysis of this main character, I think we're going to have to skip ahead and look at a couple of these other cards, such as the AEW World Championship belt, and wow, some weird card collation in there. Cards upside down? Not strange. I guess. Yeah, I got these plot twist with the location in the middle. This kind of all mixed together. Unusual. All right, so let's take a look at these equipments that Chris Jericho is going to be interacting with. We'll start with the baseball bat. This is a 1-cost equipment. It's affiliated to both heel and face, and you can only have 1 in your deck. While this bat is ready, equipped character may exhaust it to get +4 during a melee combat anytime you could take an action. So I don't immediately remember. I think when this card was revealed, I made the comment that I think this might be the only time we've seen an equipment that exhausts rather than it giving a power to the character and then the character does something. So basically, though, it's pay 1, put 4 attack on whatever you attach it to. It's worth it if you can get it on something where you're gonna be. I think you probably want to use this like twice ideally, and so getting it free on Chris Jericho at the start of the game definitely offsets his atrocious level 1 to attack. So really, he's going to be a 6-5 once this bat is attached to him for at least a turn. So I feel like that kind of takes the edge off the worst part of his stats at level 1. And at level 2, when he gets the World Championship belt. Again, it's a one of a kind, and you've got to earn it. Equip this only to a champion, and gold looks good on me. At the start of your main phase, put 3 +1 counters on the equipped character. So what Chris Jericho lacks in printed stats, he makes up for in this equipment silly kit. Like he's able to get a benefit from the benefit or from the belt where it locks onto him, as well as a benefit from the baseball bat where he gets it right away. So this strikes me as a very playable main character. However, everybody ever in the game, except for maybe like Sister Grimm, wants to put wounds on your main character. So people are going to be aggressively attacking and trying to clear that equipment off. So once we hit turn 2, turn 3, when Chris Jericho plus a bat is looking at stats that are no longer a 4-5, once he's back down to a 6-5, once he's back down to a 2-5, how good do we feel about it? He does have a relatively quick level up condition, so maybe that's not as big a deal. I think there may be something here, but he certainly has some weaknesses that I think a skilled player is going to be able to exploit. Moving on to Jon Moxley. Now, I've heard, and I don't know enough about wrestling to actually be able to say this for sure, but I have heard that this guy competes in matches to where giving him 5 health, a lot of fans feel like that's not doing a good service to this character, to the type of wrestler that he is, but it's what we got. So he is a 335. That is a rough level 1 stat block. Paradigm Shift, Combat, Pan Earth, which is not as common a thing to put in your deck. If you're going to be playing the kind of deck that uses Earth and Space, it kind of puts you into a narrow silo as far as the cards that you can fit into your deck. Choose an enemy character in the combat, switch that character's attack and defense with Jon Moxley's this combat. So if you play him and you have the Earth, his bad stat block becomes an asset rather than a liability. When an enemy character gets KO'd, Jon Moxley gains 1 XP and another XP for each character in that KO pile. So he needs 8 to level up. I feel like his level up could be problematic. Your opponent doesn't necessarily have to recruit supporting characters if they're going to be fighting a main character with a 3/3 stat block. And if they do recruit supporting characters and you don't have the Earth, he might just get punched up anyway. But if you are able to get the level up, he retains Paradigm Shift. And he gains Unscripted Violence, main phase, pay a green, choose a random challenge match that you haven't chosen this game. He's a 7/7/5. I guess we probably also need to talk about challenge matches in order to be able to fully digest what all of these characters are about. So challenge matches are specific types of plot twists. We've seen it's not even really a plot twist, but we've seen this sort of thing before briefly in the was it the FBI team or the Alien team? It was one of the teams in X-Files where they had some character specific stuff that you could pick only if you had that main character. So these wrestlers are going to have the ability to choose a challenge match, which is going to have a variety of different effects that impact all of their characters throughout the game. Starting with Steel Cage Match, this is giving all heel and face characters dodge throughout the game. This gives all heel and face characters fearless throughout the game. The ladder match, the Lights Out match, gives all heel and face characters berserk. And the Texas Death Match gives all heel and face characters lethal. I guess to run down what those keywords are, lethal, if it's you're attacking and you stun a character, you KO it. Berserk gives a +1/+1 counter whenever you attack with the character. Fearless lets you attack. Is it just main characters? Yeah. What's the Violent is the supporting character one. When you attack a main character, you double your attack. And dodge means you can't be ranged attack. So Jon Moxley at level 2 is going to be able to get at least 2 of these. I guess more if you keep paying for unscripted violence. But if you look at the words on these cards, dodge is almost useless in my opinion. Lethal is very situational. Fearless is probably consistently good. Berserker is probably consistently good. Out of the 4, Dodge is absolutely the weakest one, in my opinion. Although, obviously, if there's a matchup where you know your opponent has relying on a ton of ranged attacks, maybe it's good in that specific matchup. So at 7/7/5, with the ability to switch a character's attack and defense with Jon Moxley's, how good is that once he becomes a 7/7? I mean, if he's attacking supporting characters, it's probably still fine. But if you're trying to put wounds on a main character, I don't know if you're going to want to give the main character the 7/7. So his paradigm shift power feels like it loses a lot of efficacy at level 2. And his unscripted violence power, I feel, is going to be a little bit situational. And he could just die. He is a 3/3. I'm not super impressed with this guy. And from what I understand from wrestling fans, his whole thing is that he's like a big tough guy. So I feel like maybe they did him a little dirty. I don't know. Okay, next up we have Darby Allin. He's a 4/3/5. A little bit weak on the defense value there. It's Sting. Build. Pay yellow. Search your deck for a babyface affiliated Sting supporting character and put him onto your side. Nothing's over till you're underground. When Darby Allin gets struck in combat, he gains an XP. So he needs to get hit 3 times. Probably that's going to mean 3 wounds because his defense is a 3. Your opponent has a lot of control over when you're going to level up. They can choose not to attack you. I guess even if they choose to never attack you, you can run into them. But are you doing that just to get the experience? Again, you've got 3 health, no range, or 3 defense, no range, and 5 total health, which is not super strong. At level 2, he becomes an 8/6, so still a pretty weak defense, but a good attack value there. He still has the ability to go search Sting out of his deck and essentially play him for free. I will say the ability to pay a resource and put a character into play rather than paying recruit points has been strong at varying parts in the game. Free dudes on board, I mean, it's not totally free, but dudes on board that you don't pay recruit points for is a very strong effect. And he gains Coffin Drop, main phase, pay a red, put 3+1 counters on Darby Allin, and he has Flight this turn. So he functionally is going to get up to an 11 attack, 9 defense, and be able to fly over people. That is pretty strong. If he attacks and is able to survive that combat, he could stack those counters, but I can't see, if we're talking turn 5, 6, 7, I cannot see your opponent allowing him to keep those 3 counters. Uh, and his health, I feel like you're gonna have a hard time doing what this guy wants to do. I suppose before we move on, we should at least take a look at Sting to see what Sting uh, brings to the table for this main character. So Sting is a 1 cost babyface. He's a 0/4, which isn't excellent. But then when Sting appears, search your deck, hand, and KO pile for the baseball bat, put it on him for free, or reveal it and put it into your hand. So he gets the card out of your deck. You got to thin it to win it. You always want to, anything that pulls cards out of your deck is good. He can do it multiple times. I mean, you can only pull it out of your deck once, but every time you play him, you can go back into the KO pile and get that bat. Maybe you put it on your main character instead of putting it on Sting. He has a body that sort of gets in the way, but with printed 0 attack and the bat only letting him, like, you have to exhaust it to use it. So even if you put the bat on Sting, you declare an attack with a 1-drop 4/4, which admittedly that does feel pretty good, but on the defense, you're back to being a 0/4 because you're not ready anymore. So there are things I like about Sting as a card. I think there's a home for him in some decks. I am not convinced that what he brings to the table makes Darby Allin a super playable main character. The jury is very much out on this guy for me. I feel like he's too punchable and he's not going to get where he wants to go quick enough, even with the ability to play a character essentially for free. Does it let you, and it lets you search. So that is good. I mean, I like paying a yellow and getting a card out of my deck and then playing the Sting and getting another card out of my deck with the bat. Like, that all feels pretty good. I'm not convinced it's going to add up to winning games though. Okay, let's move on to Chris Statlander. Again, babyface affiliated, 2/5/5, Night Fever, main phase, pay an earth, KO a face down enemy supporting character. This power, there's no way that power is going to be good. We've seen effects like this over the years. They never see play. And Stay Down out of the X-Men box. Oh, I get to add a wound to a face down character. It just doesn't see play. Like, I think you'd rather, if you want that effect, you're playing the challenge match that gives your characters lethal rather than putting Earth in your deck for that effect, in my opinion. More Than a Woman, level up. When a Earth location appears on your side, Chris Statlander gains 1 XP. Well, I guess if you're going to gain your XP off having Earths in your deck, they're going to be in there regardless, even if the effect that they're in there for could be more easily replicated with something that's a little bit more accessible. Once you play those 3, oh man, so that's 3 out of 4. This person's never going to level. They're not going to level. She becomes a 10/5/5. Still has pay an earth to KO a face down enemy character, supporting character, and area 451, main phase red. Chris Statlander gains flight and invades. When she cracks the back row, she doesn't get hit back. You do care about that because at level 2, she still has level 1 level defense. Becoming a 10 on the attack is pretty impressive, but the defense is still pretty bad. So you definitely need those reds, and you definitely need your opponent to put the thing that you want to attack with Chris Statlander in their back row. They can easily play around that, but I'm not convinced that you are ever actually going to see that level 2 in the preponderance of games because you're looking to draw 3 out of 4. Kane doesn't exist in photographic. I don't think I have anything else to say about that character. Thunder Rosa, 3/4/5. I do kind of like 3/4 better than 2/5 as a stat block. Like a bigger butt, okay, but I like a main character who can actually get in there and do something. Combat, pay a red. When Thunder Rosa wins this combat, she may immediately attack another character in the defender's row. So, in order to win a combat, she's actually got to like stun and survive, I think, is how they defined it in the rule book. Pretty sure. When one or more characters are put into a KO pile from anywhere, Thunder Rosa gains that many XP. She needs to gain 5. We've seen this type of level up condition before, and when you want to get dudes in the KO pile, you can build your deck in such a way that you can get dudes in the KO pile pretty quickly, for sure. Oh, here we go. Some games check to see game effects check to see if a character wins a combat. To win a combat, the character must make it through combat resolution without getting stunned, and at least one character in the combat has to have been stunned. That okay, so it's exactly what I thought intuitively that it was. Uh, as a 3/4, maybe she's winning combats. It really depends on who your opponent's MC is and what low drops they choose to throw out. If they choose not to recruit any low drops until they are able to be well on their way to their level up condition, they might level and you might never see your level 2. Dia de los Muertos, build phase, pay an earth, put a supporting character from any KO pile onto your side, remove it from the game at end of turn. That could potentially be strong. 685 combat. When Thunder Rosa wins this combat, she may immediately attack another character in the defender's row. So again, we've seen effects kind of like this before. This really reminds me of the original Brotherhood Juggernaut main character. Was it Brotherhood? Yeah, the Brotherhood Juggernaut main character. Uh, she wants to attack, she needs to attack, and when she successfully attacks in the right kind of way, then she gets a thing that lets her attack even more. Pretty linear. Maybe if you're a fan of this wrestler, this really speaks to you. Mechanically, I think this is going to be another one that's a little bit difficult, and the payoff maybe isn't big enough for the difficulty, in my opinion. All right, I already talked about Sting. I like Sting. I like what he does. The other one drop, another one drop for the babyface team is Hikura Shida. Man, my cards are all weirdly collated here too. Look, my Luchasaurus is mixed into my one drop. Strange. Okay, so Hikaru Shida. She has dodge. She's a 2/3/1, and with the kendo stick, you pay a red. She gets +3 attack and stealth this turn. So she's like a smaller Primeval Hunter that needs reds instead of greens. Primeval Hunter saw a ton of play, but he had a printed 3 attack. This is kind of got like a weird. This really feels a lot like Primeval Hunter, but it's one cost lower. The stats aren't quite as aggressively slanted, despite what the rest of the card does. And instead of having 2 health, she has dodge in order to help her stick to the board. Primeval saw play. If your deck is on reds and you need a strong early attack option, or you maybe need like a late game team attacker that can get around some blockers, like she could team attack with one of these MCs that we just looked at that gain the ability to fly. I think there's some utility for her in a vacuum. I think there's, I mean, how aggressive do you want to be? If you want to be really aggressive, this card definitely fits into that aggro plan. Um, yeah, I think she could see play. All right, we have the 2 cost Luchasaurus. Babyface, these are all babyface. Supporting character, this guy's a 2/2/2. Tag team with the Jurassic Express. So when you can power up Luchasaurus with Jungle Boy, this tag team mechanic is going to show up on a bunch of these cards. So they're cards kind of like the way the Lone Gunmen had the ability to power each other up. These tag team cards give 2 wrestlers the ability to use their cards as power ups, which is pretty cool. And they get like added benefit stuff. It does make me wish that 6-drop Floki was in photographic as a format because I would love to take advantage of all these power-ups, but alas, illustrated and photographic do not mix. So this guy's tag team partner is Jungle Boy. I think he's a 4 cost. Yeah, so we'll talk about the tag team partners together, I think. But to start with Luchasaurus, when he gets powered up with a Jungle Boy, he gets ferocious. For the combat? Yeah, for the combat. And he has Extinction Event. When wounded, he gets +2/+2 and monstrous. So this guy could be a 4/4 ferocious as a 2-cost character. that feels pretty strong. That feels pretty playable. Now, if you are able to power him up with Jungle Boy, you are going to be putting into your deck a 4/7/1. When Jungle Boy gets powered up using Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy gains Monstrous. So Luchasaurus can gain Monstrous by being wounded, and he can give Monstrous to Jungle Boy by tag teaming him. I feel very silly saying these names. I talk about comic books all the time and I don't feel silly. This makes me feel silly. He also has the power Snare Trap, Combat, pay a Earth, Stun, an enemy attacker. Jungle Boy can only pay for this power by discarding a location from hand. So the Snare Trap has to be amplified. I don't like Jungle Boy, and I don't think I care about giving Luchasaurus Ferocious enough to actually be willing to play Jungle Boy. I get that his Snare Trap, the ability to just straight up stun an enemy attacker, particularly if it was an attacker that the opponent had to invest like a bunch of green counters into or a plot twist to try to push the attack through. There's certainly going to be times where you can punish your opponent for that, but I don't like holding my locations in hand. That means you're going to be rowing other cards to be able to keep that earth in hand. No, I don't think that makes sense. So, as strong as that power is, the penalty that you can't pay for it with locations from the row, I think makes me not really want to play it. At a 4 cost 4/7, I'm not really that impressed with his stats. I do like Luchasaurus though, a 2 cost 2/2 who becomes a 4/4 once he gets wounded. That feels like it has some traction to me. I don't care enough about giving him Ferocious to play Jungle Boy, and I certainly don't care about giving Jungle Boy Monstrous. I'm not even sure how often people are going to need to devote a team attack to a 4 cost with 7 defense. So, Jungle Boy, I'm a little bit out. Luchasaurus, I give that guy a thumbs up. I think he's playable. I mean, narrow. He's not like the best 2 drop we've ever seen. Now here's another 2 drop that I already know I'm not going to be super kind to. So Danhausen, uh, I do not like this guy's face. I don't like that this guy's face appears on his crotch. And I don't like this guy's powers. So he's a 4/3/1 with range. Not a lot of guys with range in this wrestling set, which makes a lot of sense, but if you're playing, say, just within the confines of this box, noting that this guy has range, that could be significant within the AEW single box meta. He is very nice and very evil. Danhausen is both good and evil everywhere. This power can't be turned off. So certain team affiliations have the trait good, other team affiliations have the trait evil. Most of the time it's completely irrelevant, but occasionally cards check for an evil card or a good card. So this guy would check both those boxes. He also has Ben Cursed. You pay a main phase. Main phase, you pay an Earth, which I'm already not the hugest fan of trying to shoehorn Earths into my deck. Choose an enemy character and point at it. Then choose one of the following effects at random. Now, I do like card effects that make you point, say things. I think that kind of stuff is silly as long as it's kept within the bounds of reason. This one, you point at it and you determine an effect at random. So there's 4 to choose from here. You could roll a d4. There's other flip cards over. I don't know. That character can't attack its next turn. That character can't strike this turn, stun that character, or they must be immune to curses. The fact that this can fail, the fact that you can play this guy out, invest an Earth, which is to this day feels like a more precious resource than, say, a yellow or a green, and that it could just not do anything. And that's a 25% chance of it just not doing anything. Uh, I am hard pressed to ever pull a slot machine lever when I'm playing the randomness that I will tolerate in my games of Versus is the order the cards come to me, not what they do. I want the cards to do the same thing every time I play them, and I think this one fails in that metric just a little bit. As a 4/3/2, maybe you play him for the stats, maybe you play him for the range. Probably not, because your opponent chose a steel cage match as their challenge. Never happened. All right. Penta El Zorro Medio. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This guy has a tag team with the Lucha Brothers, but we'll get to that in just a second. On his own, he is a 3/4/2 with Fear Factor. Main phase, pay a green, move an enemy main character to its front row. While attacking a main character, Penta El Zero Medio strikes with triple his attack. So when attacking a main character, he's a 9/4. That feels pretty good. The ability to grab a hold of a main character and wrench them up to the front row. We've seen Spider Carnage paying a red for the same effect for years at this point, and it's been good. It's been popular. This is an effect that I wish it was any character. I wish I could pick any character I wanted to and yank them to the front row, but unfortunately, that is not the case. I think, though, most of the time when you have access to these types of effects, it's very likely that you're using it to target the main character and pull them out from behind protection anyway. So even though this is limited to the main character, I still think it's probably good enough to see some play. And a 3 drop that attacks for 9 is a big deal. That is going to put wounds on MCs if he can get to them, and he's got a built in way to get to them. So let's look at the other half of this tag team. If you power up Penta El Zero Medio with Ray Phoenix, he heals a wound. So this is a 2 health character with a built in way to heal wounds. If you power him up, let's keep in mind this power up puts a +1/+1 on this guy. That's going to make him a 4. That doesn't mean he's going to hit that main character for 10 because it triples the strike. He's going to strike for 4, so he's going to hit for 12, which means every power up is actually giving you 3x value. That feels pretty strong too. What else does Ray Phoenix do? So Ray Phoenix is a 3/6 infinite? No. Oh, what? Okay, well, he's not infinite. Okay. Ray Phoenix is a 5 cost 3/6. During combat, you can power him up with L0 Penta L0 Medio, and he gives triple the ability for Ray Phoenix to do triple his attack this combat. If this power is granted to Ray Phoenix by powering him up with 0, he can hit anybody. It's not limited to main characters, which is pretty cool. Ray Phoenix also has flight. And the last thing on this card is the Man of 1,000 Lives. Ray Phoenix has 1,000 hit points. This power remains on while Ray Phoenix is down. So you play this guy, and he stays in play forever unless he can get lethaled. 1,000 hit points. I like this 3 drop a great deal. I think this 3 drop has a lot of utility outside of the specifics of this wrestling box. The ability to hit a main character on turn 3 for 9 is huge. The ability to grab the main character and wrench them to the front row when they'd rather remain hidden is also huge. Playing 5 drop that has infinite health and can fly is less huge. Definitely good, but 3/6 is not. I mean, you put a baseball bat on this guy and he's attacking for 7 for 21/6, and they can't get rid of him without lethal or a KO effect because he has 1,000 hit points. Okay, man. Yeah, I think I could see putting these cards into decks. I like the 3 drop way, way, way more than the 5 drop, but I think both of these are potentially playable cards. A 5, I remember when Miss America was around as a 5 drop, and the idea that she had tough and 3 health was something that people like really got uptight about for a period of time. Like, man, this 5 drop is so. Now we have a 5 drop with 1,000 life. What is happening? What is happening? All right, Claudio Castagnoli. Castagnoli? Not sure I said that right either. He is a 3 cost 4/5/1. When Claudio appears, put a -1 counter on an enemy character. If it's ready, exhaust it and put another -1 counter on it. Most of the time, your opponents are not going to be passing with ready characters. Generally speaking, we all tap out our whole boards. Versus is a very combat driven game, so we tend to be doing a lot of combat. How often are you going to get that second -1 counter? I don't know, but do I really care? This guy's a 3 cost 4/5 that puts a -1 on somebody, which kind of gives him a stat swing effect on the board of like 5/6 for 3. That's pretty okay. That's pretty not super flashy. I think you'll probably only play this guy if you're on this team and he can bring some like team attack synergy or something else to the game as well. I don't think you're playing this guy just for his effect, but his stats are fine and the effect is decent. I think this is a playable card. Eddie Kingston. This guy is a 4 cost 5/5/2. Already, I kind of like those stats. While 5 isn't the biggest number that we've ever seen on turn 4, 2 health with 5/5 feels pretty good. And while in combat with an enemy supporting character, he gets +3/+3 and becomes an 8/8. This makes him a beast card. This is the kind of card that you want to clear your opponent's board. Whatever they play it on turn 4, it's probably going to be smaller than 8/8. You use this guy to clear it. Sure, he's going to take a wound. Maybe they're going to ranged attack him or they're going to attack with the main character or something so that he's small. Like, Printed 5/5 on turn 4 is a little on the weak side, but the ability to become an 8/8 whenever you're in combat with somebody that's not a main character. It, I think Versus needs a lot of these cards that aren't necessarily flashy, but accomplish kind of a mid game chore. They do a thing that really needs to happen in order for games to feel fun and fulfilling. We want to have people able to do things. We want to have Versus a game of questions and answers, and I think this guy fits right into asking some interesting questions and definitely answering some threats. So am I super excited? No, I'm way more excited about the guy with 1,000 life in terms of pushing the game mechanic envelopes. I think those pockets of design are a little bit more fun. Like I like the wild zany stuff, but this meat and potatoes, Eddie Kingston's definitely a playable card. If you're on this team, I think he's going to see play, and maybe even outside of it. 8/8 on turn 4 is no joke. Although I guess in photographic we have 14/14 on turn 4 still, or 14 attack on turn 4. So all right, Sammy Guevara. He is a 9/5/1 5 cost character. He has leap, so he can fly on our turn. Spanish God. Sammy has pounce and mobile if you pay a earth to him. So pounce lets him. Oh, I think he can't be struck by exhausted defenders, and mobile lets him move during the main phase. So you could declare an attack and then drop him in the back row to protect him. Uh, I guess. If you need 9 attack on turn 5, this guy can get to the back row. I'm completely unimpressed with his superpower. I don't like putting Earths in my deck. I don't like paying Earths for things unless they're really, really good. I don't think Pounce plus Mobile is that great. If there was more flyers in the environment that you could actually hide him behind, so you could get your Pounce attack, then put him in the back so he's not going to get stunned, okay, maybe, but like Photos does not have a lot of flyers. So the idea that you're going to mobile him to the back and then he's going to be protected, I think most of the time that's probably not going to be the case. Not super impressed with this guy. All right, Samoa Joe. Now I see this guy, and the very first thing I think is E Honda. I remember the first time I saw this card, I was like, I hope he has a slapping power, and he sure does. So, he's a 6 cost, 7/8/2. That's pretty reasonable stat. I mean, I would have been okay with his attack being a little higher, but with 2 health, he's going to stick around for a bit. And when Samoa Joe is in melee combat, each enemy character gets -3 defense. If a supporting character gets stunned by having 0 defense while they're in combat with him, you KO it. So the backhand chops shrinks the opponent's defense, which makes his 7 attack a little bit less relevant because he's actively doing a thing that gives him functionally 10 attack because he's always going to give -3 to whatever you have, and he's a 7. So yeah, he could swing into a guy with 10 defense and still get there to hit it. The added benefit of the Muscle Buster, being able to put a supporting character to 0 defense using backhand chops and KO it without actually having to go through with combat. Maybe if this guy was like a 4 drop, but by the time he's coming out on turn 6, how many 6, 7 cost characters, 5 cost characters do you see that have 3 health? That's not super common, so I don't think Muscle Buster is gonna actually do a whole lot in most games. But to me, that's gravy. What makes this guy good is he's a functional 10 attack, 8 defense, 2 health character that you can get out there on turn 6. Are there more proactive plays you could make on turn 6? Yes, there are. That's true. I mean, we've got the Mortal Kombat box. There's some good 6 drops in there. There are other 6 drops to choose from in the photographic format, depending upon what you're trying to do. But I think this guy's totally playable. And within the context of a AEW format, uh, yeah, I think he's good. All right, Orange Cassidy. This dude is a 5/11 6 drop, 16 composite stats, huh? Freshly squeezed. While you have 6 or more recruit points, you can pay a yellow and a red to recruit Orange Cassidy instead of his recruit cost, and the Orange Punch is a yellow and a red to stun a defender. Getting this guy out for free, I wish his stats were like set the other way. Like he could come down and burst the board for 11 damage. He's got a small attack for turn 6. He's got a big defense, but he's got a small attack. Yes, you can play him for free, but if you play him for free, then are you going to have the yellow and the red to orange punch a guy when you attack into a character that has a defense that's reasonable for turn 6 and you're attacking with an attack that's reasonable for turn 4? Uh, if I'm choosing between these two 6 drops, I'm going Samoa Joe. I think you have to be in a pretty specific type of deck. You already have to be on yellows and reds, but also not need those yellows and reds so badly that you're putting them somewhere else. Yeah, I'm not in on that 6 drop Orange Cassidy. I do like the art though. I like the way he's swinging into that punch. I kind of wish if we're gonna do this live action stuff, we got more shots like this guy and fewer shots like this guy. I'd like to see more of the actual like combat, and Orange Cassidy absolutely is giving me some dynamic combat there. So that's the best thing I can say about the card. I like the card art. All right, 7 drops. So we're at the top of the babyface curve now. This is Keith Lee. He has a 9/11, 2 health, toss. When he appears, you choose a character on your side to gain flight. I feel like the toss keyword could have made it onto more cards in this box. Like it feels thematic, but whatever. 4, he is limitless. Main phase, pay a green, ready Keith Lee. He can use this power any number of times per turn. I really like being able to ready characters and attack with them again. I love doing that with Buffy. Yeah. Is it something you're going to do with this guy? Do you want to sit on greens? Do you want to wait until turn 7 to use your greens and then start getting multiple attacks with your 9/11 Keith Lee? Maybe if I look at the power as gravy, but then he's just a 9/11 too. So I'm not sure that as a end game top of the curve card, this guy does quite enough for me to get excited about him. Within the context of the AEW box, though, this guy is the curve topper. He does have the ability to avoid somebody else's defense by granting flight, which would be useful in photographic format as a whole, but also particularly in like an AEW specific format. Attacking multiple times, maybe. Maybe it's what you need. Maybe the equivalent of paying the green is the equivalent functionally on the game of recruiting 2 7 drops on turn 7. And if that happens, if 9 attack is good enough that you can chop down the defender, stand up, and chop down the MC, in those moments, this is going to look great. I'm not sure how many of those moments are going to happen organically, and I'm also not sure how hard they are going to be to engineer by sitting on your greens and setting this all up. So there's a couple places where I feel like maybe this guy doesn't quite do as much as I would want out of a card that I'm going to pay 7 for and take up a slot in my deck while not being able to play for turns 1 through 6. Uh, Not my favorite 7 drop, but again, I do love attacking more than once with the same character on a turn, so he does do a thing that I like. I'm just not sure how consistent or reliable it's going to be. Moving on to the plot twist for the babyface team, we're going to start with Dynamite. If this is a melee combat, choose a character on your side in the combat. When it strikes an enemy supporting character this combat, stun that enemy character. So this basically gives the exact same power, except doesn't cost a red, that was on the Defender's Iron Fist that made huge waves and was a staple in a lot of different formats for many years of the game. The ability to stun a character just by striking, even if you don't have attack equal or greater to their defense, I think is huge. If you're on this team, this is a great plot twist. Assuming you don't get your attack reduced to 0, which is a thing that sometimes happens. Looking at you, shock to the system. All right, we have Elevation. Choose a character on your side. It has +2/+2 and Leap. If it already had Leap, instead of getting +2/+2, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So if you've got a guy that's printed Leap, he gets still just +2/+2, but it's a permanent. It's +2/+2 via counters rather than a temporary buff. I wish that you had the ability to play this in combat. I I just I don't like the fact that this has to be a main phase turn. Card. It does give the +2/+2 for the turn. So if you play this on Keith Lee and then you play another one on him, you could give him +2/+2 for the turn and then 2/+1 counters because he got Leap off the first elevation. I don't know if I want to be making my game plan around hoping that I draw multiple copies of Elevation any more than I wanted to make my game plan around artificially giving my character symbiosis to take advantage of symbiote based plot twists. So I think probably this would have a better home if it was a combat plot twist that I could, haha, surprise you with +2/+2, and also had a main phase mode where I could target a character with Leap and it could get +2 counters outside of using this on like specifically Keith Lee to be able to get more value out of this in a turn, this feels like a worse you won't like her when she's angry. Like +2/+2 is a reasonable buff to give a character, but it's way, way more important to give that buff to the character in the combat where it can catch an enemy by surprise when they have less options available to them. Making this a main phase plot twist, I think, hurts it overall. It's still probably playable if you're on this team. If you have guys that have printed leap, that's which Keith Lee can give to somebody through the toss. Uh, it is woven into the synergy of the babyface team to where I think it's probably fine there. But if I'm on some other main character and I'm splashing baby faces in my deck, I don't know that this one makes the cut. I think by being main phase, it's hampered in how actually good of a combat trick it is. Pop. Let's make that crowd pop, yeah? Choose a supporting character on your side. When it wins this combat, put 3+1 counters on it, then heal each wound from it. This is another just like awkward plot twist. Like, at least this one I can do during combat, but it doesn't actually get the buff until after the combat resolves. And that buff might be important. Like, do I want to play combat plot twists that don't buff my character until I already got through the combat without any benefit from the plot twist? I don't know, man. The healing, your opponent, this sends up a flare that says to your opponent, this character is about to get huge, and I'm going to heal them all up. This is a problem. What you need to do is win this combat now. So if your opponent has the ability to throw down a combat trick to follow this up and basically cancel it, not only are they going to stun your character, they're also canceling all the value from this card you just threw from your hand. I am deeply reluctant to play this kind of card. It's a huge risk unless you're attacking like a guaranteed target. But then, how often in versus does it feel like not good to take your best attacker and have to throw it into a smaller guy just to guarantee you get the stun through? That's generally not the way I want to play. I want to be doing like proactive things. I'm going to be trying to win the game, not trying to push through one measly attack to make sure that this plot twist actually does something rather than doing nothing. This one feels pretty awkward to me. I'm not super impressed with Pop, although I fully acknowledge the ability to fully heal your character and put most of a might makes right onto them all in one package does feel really strong. You just have to actually get there, and I mean sometimes it's gonna look good, but it's not my favorite kind of situation to be in. So we've got the right tunnel, the revolution, full gear, and All Out. Those are the locations. They're fine. I mean, I'm glad they gave them different names. I wish they would lean into having varieties of named locations. Wait, hold on. So that's all the locations. They're fine. They do what they're supposed to do. There was also this table that got tucked down. The cards in my box got collated really weird. This table is a one of a kind. It's a zero cost equipment. Any combat, pay a red if the equipped character is defending a melee attack, stun an attacker, and KO the table. Uh, that combined with pop, that's a good synergy. But that's a lot of work for 3+1 counters and some healing. Uh, if you're on reds and you're on these teams, the ability to out of nowhere stun an attacker, I guess it's not out of nowhere because again, this is an equipment. You have to put it on there. Your opponent has to know what they're risking when they're running into this, and that's going to inform their choices. How often are you actually going to get to KO the table and stun an attacker? And how often is your opponent going to attack in such a way that you never really have a juicy target for it? I'm not sure how good this is going to be. Although again, I fully acknowledge KOing attackers is pretty awesome. Or stunning, rather. Sorry. Stunning. Okay, so now we're going to get into the heal brick. We're going to start with the main characters. And we'll begin with Adam Cole. So this guy is a 1/6/5. Do not like that attack value. Combat, pay a green. Adam Cole gets +1 attack for each resource on your side. I mean, I get it. You print him with a small attack and you give him a way to buff his attack. Sure, but that's awkward. Does get better over the game. When a supporting character appears, Adam Cole gains 1 XP for each of its printed powers. He needs 9. Uh, the, Obviously, you're going to put characters in your deck that have like multiple printed powers. So if we're relying only on ourselves and we assume most characters have 2 printed powers, we're looking at turn 5 before he levels up. That's horrific. But we have to assume our opponent is going to. If we're recruiting characters with multiple powers every single turn, your opponent is either going to lose the game or have to recruit some characters to answer those threats. You have to recruit before you can declare attacks, so they're not going to be able to do anything cheeky like get this guy face down during the build and then do their recruits. So he's probably going to level, but I'm not crazy about the level up condition. Once he levels up, he still has boom, which is good because his printed attack is 2, which is terrible. But his defense is 12, which is a big number. So he's a 212-5 at level 2 with the ability to gain as much attack as you have resources, which by the time he levels, I think we're going to assume is like 4 or 5. So we're probably looking at like 6 or 7 attack and 12 defense. That's more than reasonable. Again, assuming he can get leveled up by the mid game. He also gains Panama Sunrise. Pay a yellow until your next turn. Adam Cole has Flight and pays one less power symbol the first time he uses each of his superpowers each turn. So he has the ability to pay a yellow and then boom on your turn for free, and then boom when your opponent tries to attack him for free. Is that going to be a big enough attack to really be a huge threat with your 5 defense or your 5 health? I don't know. I mean, he's probably going to dodge a turn 1, turn 2 wound unless the opponent has some kind of team attack with that 6 defense. And at 12 defense on his level 2, there's going to be a lot of decks that are going to struggle to get up to that number and put the wounds on him. But even if I'm relying on team attacks, if I know he can boom and get +5 attack, I mean, so he's not ferocious. Like, so you were able to clip one of my team attackers. I still put you down. Seems a little awkward to me. There may be something there, but yeah, it feels a little awkward. Brian Danielson. So way back in the day, one of the guys on my Destiny 2 fire team when we were doing raids in like Vault of Glass, because in like the first couple years of Destiny, one of the guys on my fire team. So I spent literally hundreds of hours on a headset and mic with this dude. His dog was named Daniel Bryan. And when we'd be in the middle of a raid, you don't always want to have to take Daniel Bryan out to go potty or go for a walk or whatever is going on. So I have heard the name Daniel Bryan so many times over the few years around the time when I started playing Versus is around the time Destiny was out. And so seeing Brian Danielson, which, and again, I'm not a wrestling guy, but my understanding is when Brian Danielson left the other wrestling promotion, they had some kind of rule or something in his contract so that he couldn't wrestle under his name. So he made his name Brian Danielson instead of Daniel Bryan, which is what he wrestled under with the other company. I don't know which one is his real name. I don't really care, but it kind of warms my heart to, after all these years of hearing, like, not now Daniel Bryan, now there's a Brian Danielson in my favorite game. Uh, Total aside that has nothing to do with the cards there. This guy had a little bit of a showing at, I think it was Gen Con. A couple people played him, so let's dig in and see what this dude does. So he is a 4/4/6. I am a fan of that stat block. 4/4/6. That is a real stat block. I love that stat block. Uh, I wish more I guess if more main characters had a stat block like that, I wouldn't be so excited about it. But that is a solid attack, a solid defense that can carry you through like turns 1 and 2, maybe even up into there's 3 drops that he's going to be able to not get hit by, and 3 drops that he's going to be able to hit. 6 health. I like everything about that to begin with. The American Dragon. Main phase, pay a red. Brian Danielson has flight and range this turn. Okay. Flight is a scarce commodity. Range is going to let him use that big attack and not get hit back because there's not a lot of range in this box either. A little more range in photo overall, but still, those are solid powers. Decent powers for a fair price on a character that already has good stats. What? Where is this guy going to go wrong? Why are people not more of a fan of this guy? When Brian Danielson wins a combat, he gains 1 XP. I could see how that could be a problem. If your opponent has a printed like 5 defense on their main character and they're choosing not to recruit 1s and 2s, you could get held down. Eventually, they're going to have to recruit something. Maybe you could like team. Does it have to be solo? No, he just has to win the combat. So he has to be able to attack him and not get stunned. I could see how you could get stuck if your opponent doesn't recruit juicy targets early in the game. Yeah, you could get stuck. But let's assume you don't get stuck and Daniel Bryan gets to level 2. Brian Danielson gets to level 2. He becomes a 7/6/6, so decent stats. I mean, I like the 4/4 on level 1 a lot more than I like the 7/6 on level 2, but He keeps American Dragon and Kick Your Head In. Combat, pay a green. When Bryan Danielson wins this combat, the enemy player discards 2 random cards. Earlier in the game, and this guy could level early, because if he gets to attack on turn 1 and attack on turn 2, boom, he's leveled. And the earlier in the game, you can start paying greens and punching cards out of your opponent's hand. Like, actually giving them brain damage. He's kicking their head in and making them dumber, giving them fewer options to choose from. I love the flavor on this. That's really good. Like, you're going to be able to cripple some decks if you level up on 2 and you start pouring greens out, and they've got 7 cards in hand. Now they have 5. Next turn they end up with 3. And even though they're drawing, you're ripping cards out of their hand faster than they can replace them. That feels really good. Now the risk, and this is really crazy. Like, I wish we had more main characters like this. I really like what this guy's doing. It is good stats, a decent power to support those good stats, a reasonable level up condition that does contain some risk. Your opponent does have some counterplay against it, and a powerful finisher that, and it attacks along like a couple different angles. So he's not just an all-out aggro guy who's trying to like use that big stat and like pummel you the whole game. Yeah, he starts off that way, but once he gets to level 2, he starts attacking your card advantage. That's very cool. I am not surprised this guy saw play. I think this guy is definitely playable, though I fully concede there's going to be some games where you can probably level quick enough and recruit in such a way that he never sees experience. All right, Dr. Britt Baker. I guess I owe Dr. Britt Baker an apology because I laughed at the label doctor when I saw her in the card reveals, but she's actually a dentist who also is a wrestler. What a world. And now she's on my versus cards. What a world. What a world we live in. Okay, so role model. Sorry, she's a 3/3/5. I don't like any of that. I don't like 3/3. I don't like 5. Role model. Put +1/+1 counters on a supporting character on your side equal to Dr. Britt Baker's attack. That's bad. Unless you can do something to make her bigger. Pay a Earth for 3/+1 counters. I mean, I guess bad is a little too harsh, but that's a lot. Like, those counters aren't going to stick around. They're going to get stunned off. So now you've, and they're not that many. Like, if she could do it during combat, if it was any combat and my guy's in combat and I can go, oh, I pay my Earth and now I'm dumping my attack value as a combat trick. In combat, 3 is a big number. In the main phase, 3 is a smaller number because your opponent can see it coming. They can prepare. It's not going to catch them by surprise. The Doctor will see you now. Level up 4. When a character gets wounded, Britt Baker gains an XP. That's a pretty easy level up condition. You have a lot of control over whether she's going to see those characters get wounded. Now, I don't know if you can count on your opponent to feed you XP because she is so punchable and so easily stunnable that if I'm going to declare multiple attacks, I'm definitely going to stun her first and make sure that she doesn't see the other characters get wounded so she doesn't pick up all that XP. But even so, I think her ability to level up is pretty reasonable. Once she levels up, she becomes a 6/6/5, still kind of a weak stat block for a level 2, but given how her role model power works, she's now putting 6/+1 counters onto somebody. And really, I think that's where you want to be at. I think you want to get her leveled and save all of your spaces for once she is leveled. Save all of your Earth for once she is leveled, and then you use those Earths to put +6/+6 on your dudes, not +3. She also gains Lockjaw, which this is some brutal art. Like, she's actually yanking on the jaw of this poor woman. Choose an enemy character in the combat and put a -1 counter on it for each printed power it has. Uh, so at most, it's going to be pay red, put 3 on somebody. Probably it's going to, like, on average, 2. Sometimes it's going to be completely useless. I don't I don't care about Lockjaw as a power at all. I guess it synergizes a little bit both with role model and ameliorates a little bit of her low stat problem. Uh, I'm out. Not super impressed with the Doctor. She's not terrible. Putting the +6 on, if there were more flying supporting characters in photo, or if you build her with characters that you can put in the front row and make it harder to get to her, and she can just be a support machine, maybe. I don't know. I'm being too charitable. Yeah. Not super impressed with Dr. Britt. I apologize. Jade Cargill. So she is a 3/4/5. reasonable stats. Jade Brand combat, pay a red, resolve the combat. We've seen SAG use this trick a few times, being able to end the chain of. So I guess for people who aren't totally familiar, if I declare combat, I can play a thing, then you can play a thing, then I can play a thing, then you can play a thing, and so on. And it's always one thing at a time. Now there are times where I might declare combat and I say, okay, and then I'm going to power up 3 times. Technically, I power up once and then you have a chance to play a thing. For ease of play with experienced players, we often kind of like blow past that because it often doesn't matter at all. But there are times where it's critical that you, no, 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 that's my timing window, and I'm going to resolve this combat before you can play those other 2 power ups. And now your guy's not big enough to deal with my guy, and you wasted your attack. Your opponent has to be willing to walk into that trap. Uh, Maybe since you get to go first, the better line of play with her is you declare the attack with her and then you pay the red when you're attacking, and that red shuts off your opponent's ability to play plot twists or mess with your attacks. I feel like that's going to be the more valuable situation for that power, and less often you're going to be on the defense and use it to try to stuff an attack that somebody was relying on plot twists or power ups to get big enough. Probably. Green like money. Level up 6 at the start of your main phase. Jade Cargill gains 1 XP for each green location on all sides. Maybe your opponents will help you with this, but probably not. If I'm on a deck that has greens in it and you're on this main character, maybe I don't play those greens, or maybe I play them and use them immediately because there are lots of other cards that are in the format that exist that punish you for having face up locations. So it's kind of unfortunate for Jade Cargill that she came out in this environment with this X-Men box that we just saw, where there's lots of cards that are like, yes, please leave your locations face up. And now here she is hoping for that. Now she's not punishing those characters. Like if you're on Jade, me leaving my greens face up doesn't like punish me the way leaving my greens face up I could get punished for with some of the Brotherhood and X-Men cards that just came out. But still, why would I want to feed you experience? I have almost total control over 1/2 of that spigot, and if you're limited to only your own side, that means you want to be playing greens every turn and not ever using them, and that's still going to take you a while to get up to that 6. It seems a little sluggish on the level up. And if you miss at all on your draw, I mean, there's going to be games where maybe she just doesn't level at all. I mean, your opponent might not even have greens as well, so there's also that to consider. You're probably on your own with this level up, and it's super super draw dependent. What do you get if you get there? Will you become a 7/6/5? Not super impressed with these as level 2 stats, especially with how hard this level up was. I mean, can we see like some 7/7s, some 8/8s maybe? Uh, she still has the ability to resolve the combat right away, which I do think is a good effect. And then 6 greens. So you're going to need 2 of your wilds plus all 4 of your greens or some combination thereof. KO an enemy main character that Jade Gargill stunned in combat this turn. So she has to stun the enemy main character, survive it with her only 6 defense, and have 6 locations to be able to do her thing. There's a good chance I don't. There's a good chance I don't ever even play that main character. I like to try to play every main character at least once or twice, kind of get a feel for them. I don't think I need to get a feel for Jade Cargill. I think I know what she's about, and I ain't into it. Moving on to Malachi Black. This is a 2/5/5. I'm glad it's not a 2/4, and that's about the most positive thing I can say about the stats. I really don't like this 2/5/5 stat block. Skilled Striker. Any combat, pay a red. Malachi strikes 2 additional times this combat. I understand why they give him a small attack. If they're going to give him an ability like that, that makes him functionally a 6/5. That's pretty. I mean, that would be really strong if there's a main character level 1 that was printed 6/5. But he's not. You got to get that red in order to get up to that, so that slows him down a little bit. When an evil character on your side attacks, Malachi Black gains an XP. You need to get to 6. Now you have all the control in the world over what characters you put in your deck. So I think in order to make this guy work, you're going to want to be a little bit front loaded. Like you definitely want to hit a 1-drop. You almost for sure want to hit a 2-drop. You probably want him affiliated with this guy, because if you need team attacks to try to get something to go through, or if your opponent isn't recruiting characters, so there's only one thing to attack, you want to be able to team attack with your 1-drop, with your 2-drop. Because if I have a non-affiliated, like a babyface 1-drop, and you only have one thing to attack. I can only get 1 XP with Malachi Black. Whereas if I had a heal, 1 drop, so I could team attack with this guy, I could pick up that 2. If you are going with the plan of recruiting low cost characters that this guy can team attack with, I think it's probably reasonable that he might level turn 3, maybe turn 4. If your opponent does a good job of keeping the board kind of naked and keeping their things face down and stunned out, there could be games where you just don't level at all. If you're not presented with attacks early enough in the game, and we're getting to turn 4, turn 5, and I'm playing big fatties, and you're still a 2-5, that's not a great place to be in. But most of the time, people play cards in versus. They actually want to get units in the board. So assuming this guy has the ability to attack enough times to get his 6 XP, he becomes a 5/9. I like that defense value a great deal. Black Mist. Choose an enemy character. Malachi Black could melee attack. It can't attack on its next turn. He can use this any number of times, so he can stuff attacks. That feels pretty good. That could really screw up, especially if he gets this early and you're fighting a main character. Can it hit main characters? Yes, it can. You're fighting a main character that needs to attack in order to get its XP. I mean, like a mirror match, for example, that could really screw somebody up. Skilled Striker, any combat or any turn combat, pay a red. Malachi Black strikes 2 additional times this combat, bringing him up to like a 15 without anything else. Yeah, if you get there, this guy does some stuff. I'm pretty unimpressed with how he gets there, uh, but still, I mean, it's doable. It could be a little bit that level up condition. I think it's not unreasonable, but it certainly has the potential to be a place where your opponent can disrupt you and cause some problems. But his level 2 feels pretty good. I like a 5/9 that can freeze out opponents' players, make it so they can't attack. Like, there's a lot of good things on that card. MJF. He is a 4/3/5. Salt of the Earth. Build phase, pay yellow. Spend any amount of recruit points. Search your deck for an evil character with that cost or less. And put it onto your side. So it's a tutor card. You get to pay yellow and you can go in your deck and get whatever you want. That's very good. That's very strong. And I'm guessing the rest of this card is going to be a little bit weak because of how strong that Salt of the Earth power is. Better Than You, level up 3 when MJF attacks. If the attacker's total attack is greater than the defender's attack, he gains an experience. So he's printed with an attack slanted stat block of 4, but there's going to be a lot of main characters you're not going to be able to have a favorable situation swinging that attack into their defense. So he's going to need something, or he's going to struggle to get XP, but he only needs 3 XP. So if your opponent recruits a 1-drop, that's probably one of your XP there, and so on. So that would be my guess, is that you want, as MJF, you want your opponent to be recruiting 1s and 2s, so you can collect that experience quick and level up. Once you level up, you become a 4/10, so his attack stays the same, which I'm not crazy about, but that defense buff is massive. He's still at 5 health, and you know it. Main phase, pay 3 Earth. That's a lot, dude. Pay 3 Earth for the rest of the game. When MJF attacks, he gains attack this combat until his attack is higher than the defender's attack. He can only use this once per game. So paying 3 Earth is a lot, but it makes it so that you're always going to be getting buffed up on the attack. That is strong. Dynamite Diamond Ring. Pay 3 red for the rest of the game. If MJF wounds a defender in combat, it gains an additional wound. He can only use this power once per game. So if you can get there, this guy gets a big attack and he gets wound acceleration, which is pretty strong. But the fact that he has the ability to guarantee that he's not going to miss his early curve, and I feel like that level up could be his downfall. If I just choose not to recruit characters that satisfy his level up condition, what, you gonna throw -1s on my MC? That's like your only other option. So if he gets to level 2, this guy seems real strong, but I think your opponent is going to be deeply invested in trying to make that as hard for you as possible. And if that's the case, are you going to get there? I don't know. I'm interested to find out though. Unlike Jade, I actually want to play with MJF. All right, so we're looking at Hook. This guy is a 3/1/1 1-cost character. That's a forgettable but fine stat block. There's plenty of like aggressive 1-drops that are 3/1s. Send Hook. During build phase, if a Heel or face supporting character appeared on your side, you can put hook from your hand onto your side. So you can play this guy for free. As long as you recruited somebody else that's on one of these teams, you can throw this guy down for free. That's pretty awesome. That makes him better than your average 3-1 one drop, in my opinion. He also has a superpower. Now, I'm generally pretty down on one drops that have superpowers that you absolutely have to activate in order to get good use out of them. Now, there are some notable examples of important one drops throughout the life of his verses, but a lot of times, if you see a one drop that has a superpower and only one health, they aren't going to see a lot of play. Like Charlie 27 has a superpower, but the reason he was able to use it is because he stuck around for 3 turns. Uh, this guy's not sticking around for 3 turns waiting for you to draw your reds. But if you do draw the red, choose an enemy character in the combat to get -3, -0. So he's able to pheromone control out uh, the attack. It's basically a shock to the system on somebody that you go into combat with, and you can play him for free. If you're on face and heal teams and you care about swarming the board, then I'll let you play this guy. This guy seems like he'd be really good for Malachi Black. Malachi Black really wants to get evil dudes down that can attack. So this is a playable one drop. Is he going to see play outside of these teams? I don't know if 3-1 give your opponent a shock to the system. Uh, Spider Woman called that like pheromone something, right? Anyway, doesn't matter. Playable one drop, depending upon the context. I'm not crazy about the guy, but he's not bad. All right, Nyla Rose. This is a one cost 0-2. What is with all the people with 0 printed stats in this box? When Nyla Rose appears or recovers, she gets +4 this turn, so she's a one cost 4/2/2, and you're probably going to be able to kill 2 things with her. I very much like this card. This is a playable one drop. Sure, I don't really care that she's a 0-2 on your turn. Yeah, stun her, please. Let her recover, and then she's going to be a 4-2 again, and I'm going to crack something else. In Illustrated, we pay like 2 for 4/2s, right? Like Match, Bullseye, like these guys are 4/2s, and this is a 1 that is going to attack as a 4/2. Now, your opponent could do something cheeky like not attack her and just leave this 0-2 sitting there on board not doing anything. But okay, cool. Have fun not getting to my back row if you're going to try to not let my one drop gain that 4 attack. So, yeah, I think this is a playable card. All right, Matt Hardy. All right, this guy, some of these guys I cannot take seriously. All right, so this guy's big money Matt Hardy. He is a 2 cost 3/4/1. You can pay a green during the build phase and gain a recruit point. You can use it any number of times each turn. I just don't see people doing that. I'm not going to be doing that. I don't know who is going to be doing that. Who is going to be paying green locations to be able to temporarily ramp, to have one turn soft ramp? I just can't see it. 3/4, sure, I guess if you need a 2 drop, but I kind of look at this guy as like a 3/4 blank. I'm never gonna use that green power. Andre El Idolo. He has leap. He's a 2/2/2, and when he leaps over at least one enemy character, he gets +3/+3 this combat. So this guy solves a lot of problems. So he can fly, which is awesome. He sticks to the board, so you're good with 2 health, so he's probably going to get 2 attacks. When he does that fly thing, he attacks for 5/5, which is a reasonable stat block for a 3, some even 4 drops. So this guy is doing a bunch of great stuff. And the fact that yes, he doesn't full on fly, so you're not going to be able to use him defensively, but getting over the top, there isn't a lot of ways to stealth and flight into the back row. So this guy is a low cost character who has the ability to get into the enemy back row, and he can get in there at a set stat size big enough to actually put wounds on main characters early in the game. This seems like a very playable main character. Now, I suppose it should be noted that your opponent can play around this guy and put everybody in the back, so there's nobody for him to fly over. So he's just a 2/2/2/2. But okay, cool. I'll attack your main character with somebody else then. I think if you're trying to play around my 2 drop by racking all your dudes in the back row and not having anybody up front to block and protect, I think I feel pretty good about that exchange. All right, Ethan Page. This is one of those cards that I'm talking about where the art is just not dynamic enough. I'm super unimpressed with the art. I mean, I'm super unimpressed with these sweaters too. What is that? Zebra print sweater? Who wears a zebra print sweater? I guess Ethan Page. Or wait, is the other guy Ethan Page? I don't even know which one of these guys is Ethan Page. This That looks awesome. I know which one of these guys is Andrade El Idolo. I can tell, and he looks awesome. These guys, they look like they're going to Panera for a bagel. All right, so tag team men of the year. Oh, geez. uh, this is a 3 cost 5/5/1 all ego. Ethan Page can only team attack with Scorpio Sky. So this guy's not going to be able to team attack with anybody else on your team. That seems pretty weak. I don't like that drawback, but printed 5/5, that's okay. That's not the end of the world. Now Scorpio Sky. Oh, I guess Scorpio Sky must be the guy who is in the zebra print. Sorry, Ethan Page. Didn't mean to besmirch you with accusing you of a zebra print sweater. Uh, so his tag team partner is a 5 cost. So again, tag team, they can power each other up. When Ethan gets powered up by Scorpio Sky, you get to draw a card. That is probably my favorite tag team power that I've seen so far. Most of these tag team powers I'm not been terribly impressed with, but getting an extra card, especially since you're replacing it with a card from hand, that feels pretty good. When Scorpio Sky gets tag team partnered by Ethan Page, the enemy player discards a random card. I guess we didn't learn our lesson with the FBI, huh? The gunmen. So in addition to that, Scorpio Sky is a 5 cost 7/5/1. He has leap and he has pay yellow, rearrange the enemy player's formation. So rearranging the opposing player's formation during your turn to optimize your attacks is very strong. 5 defense on a 5 cost character feels like it's getting into some pretty weak territory. Out of all the tag team effects I've seen so far, I am most impressed with these guys. But the fact that they can only team attack with each other, Ethan only has 1 health. How often are you actually going to be in a position to team attack with a 3 and a 5 cost character that each only have 1 health? What are you going to wait till turn 8? That feels terrible. Is Ethan going to survive through turns 3 and 4 to get to turn 5? Probably not. So I think the tag team part of it, you almost look at these guys as these guys are, or I'm sorry, it's not both guys. It's just Ethan Page. Sorry, didn't mean to besmirch Scorpio Sky by saying he was also all ego. Uh, that does make it a little bit better, but then again, 5/5 on turn 3 with almost no drawback, and potentially it could let you draw an extra card. Maybe. I'm maybe on the fence with these guys. I think my prediction is that these are the best of the tag team guys that we've seen so far, and they're still probably not good enough to want to run both. I think your deck needs to be doing other things that make those cards a good fit for your deck, and then the tag team synergy is like gravy on top of that. I don't think you can run those guys because of the tag team or because of any of the words on those cards specifically. You need to have a deck that's looking for heal characters already or some other form of synergy. All right, so we're back down to 3 drops with Ricky Starks. This guy also has leap. There's a lot of leap on the heal team. I guess because they're light on their heels, like a fighter should be. 3 3 6 1 absolute. Any turn combat, pay a red. This combat, Ricky Starks gains attack equal to his defense and defense equal to his attack. So he's a printed 3/6. He would become a 9/9. He could potentially become much bigger with even a single +1 counter. That's going to grow exponentially because it's going to give you the plus from the counter and then also the plus from the ability. So this is certainly a 3 drop that if you're willing to invest in it, you can get him up to a big attack. But didn't we already have a 3 drop that can attack at 9? Like, so this guy gets up to a 9 attack. Okay, that is cool. Like, 9 is a big number on turn 3. But we've got this L0 guy who can get up to 9 attack, and it doesn't cost a red. I don't have to pay a red to get up to 9 attack. I don't know. I get that they're kind of coming at the same problem of like, let's make a big attack buffy sort of dude for each of these teams on turn 3. I like the babyface one more than the heel one. Although there are, again, like you put a +1 counter on this guy and all of a sudden his attack buff starts to look a lot better than L0's. So there's probably places for both of these characters to see some play. I lean more towards the 2 health guy that I don't have to invest an additional card into to get the attack buff. By default, this guy's a 3/6 flyer. Not even a flyer. 3/6 leaper. A leaper. Is that like a leper? Okay, Matt Jackson, one half of the goofball crew. I feel like both of these guys look like if Charlie Kelly was trying to wrestle. So tag team Matt Jackson with the Young Bucks. I'll skip the tag team until we talk about the other guy. He is a 4 cost 6/4, whatever it takes, pay an earth. When another character on your side gains one or more wounds, it doesn't gain any wounds instead. That is a very strong, strong power. How often are you gonna actually gonna be able to use it? Like if I'm worried about that, I'm probably gonna kill this guy first, right? And Nick Jackson. Nick Jackson is a 4 cost 6/4, so these guys have the same stat block, the same cost, and he has Super Kick Party. If Nick Jackson is in the front row and ready, exhaust him and at least one other ready character in your front row. If you do, they all strike an enemy front row character. So you have the ability to essentially declare 2 attacks without having to worry about getting cracked back, because you're just going to exhaust these characters and then deal the damage. And there's no actual combat happening, even though the net result will be the same or similar to that of a team attack. If you power up Matt Jackson with Nick Jackson, he gets the ability to put 2 -1 counters on an enemy character in the combat. Oh, do the rest of the tag team ones have to happen in combat as well? Oh, they do. Huh. I'm not sure if that meaningfully changes how much I care about tag team, but the fact that it doesn't let you activate it during main phase power up actions, it's only during combat, it definitely makes its use case a little bit more narrow. Probably still fine. Most of these, I don't think it really matters one way or the other. But okay, so Nick Jackson gets powered up with Matt Jackson, and you put 2 additional +1/+1 counters on Nick Jackson. So Nick in play, Matt gives him +3/+3 in the form of counters. Matt in play, Nick will give him a +1 from the power up and 2 -1 counters on another character in the combat. The ability to not take any wounds on Matt Jackson, I think, is pretty reasonable. I'm much less impressed with Nick Jackson's power, although, again, I fully concede there's going to be times where I use these two guys to team attack using Super Kick Party, and I get to keep both my dudes. Whereas if I declared the attack regularly, you would have killed one of my dudes. So it does let me spend an earth to get further ahead on board state. But how often am I going to do that versus don't take any wounds at all? I definitely value Matt Jackson's ability to stop all wounds from going on to a character, probably higher than the pseudo team attack from Nick Jackson. But overall, 4 costs, 6/4s that have weird power up synergy. I'm not super impressed with either of these knuckleheads. Lance Arthur, this is a 5 cost heal affiliated 5/8/2. While Lance Arthur is defending against a melee team attack, he strikes with double his attack against each attacker. Who's going to give you this? Who's going to team attack into a guy that makes you strike back bigger? And if they do, like, they know that this power exists, you're not catching anybody by surprise. Maybe there's going to be times when your opponent's forced to make a suboptimal attack and this guy gets to strike, KO 2 things because I had to push that attack through. But I think most of the time that's not going to happen. Most of the time, this guy's a 5/8/2 with no power, and that to me is pretty unimpressive. Pretty boring. Maybe, maybe 8 defense is big enough, but I don't think so. All right, Miro, 9/7/2, the Redeemer. When Miro appears, enemy characters can't strike this turn. That is a aggressive deck curve topper if I ever saw one. This guy falls in the same bucket as like Redshift. A higher cost card, but comes down and allows an aggro deck to push through for that last wound or 2 wounds. So like maybe we have board parity. I play this guy and all of a sudden I blow out your whole board and I don't get cracked back on anything. And now I pass turn to you and you've just got ruins. You've got smoldering wreckage where your board used to be because this guy made it so that your dudes can't strike back for the turn. Um, After that initial Redeemer power triggers, he's just a 9/7/2 for 6. That's probably okay because that initial power feels really, really strong. But 2 health, I could care less about 2 health on this guy. All I care about this guy is what he does when he comes into play, which is a pretty strong effect. It's going to take a little bit of setup. You're going to have the board in the right situation for this to come down. And sometimes it's not going to do anything. Sometimes it's going to be a 9/7 to blank. and that's what your 6-drop is. But there's going to be times where this guy comes down and he causes your opponent to get completely blown out. I definitely see that happening. Wardlow. This is a 7/7/2 Powerbomb Symphony, main phase, pay a green, wound an enemy supporting character. Wardlow can use this power any number of times on the same character each turn. So he can't spread wounds around, but he can finish a guy off by pouring greens into him. I feel like there's a lot of characters in this box that have any number of times per turn superpowers. Um, sure, 7/7 is fine, I guess. Uh, 2 health, so really you're probably going to use this like once on a guy, once on another guy. I have a hard time, kind of like Jade Cargill, I have a hard time seeing you get to turn 6, get to the point of the game where you would be able to play this guy and then chain a bunch of greens together and still have those greens available to be chained together. If you're putting greens in your deck, chances are your main character needs greens. Chances are throughout your curve, there's going to be some green superpowers. So this idea of saving greens till the very end so you can just torch down a guy like boom, boom, boom. I'm going to put 3 wounds on your Maeve right now and wreck her. Like, how often is that really going to happen? Probably not. Probably you're going to put a wound on a guy, then attack him, and then he dies from the attack. Like, it's going to be cleanup more than removal, I guess, is the short way of getting to the point I'm trying to make here. He's probably okay. I have a feeling that if I start putting this guy into decks, what's going to happen is I'm never going to have the greens to really go off late game. And if I'm saving the greens the whole game, then they're dead. And I don't want cards that are dead in my deck until turn 6, not locations. I don't even like the fact that 6-drops are dead cards until turn 6. All right, Kenny Omega. This is a 7-cost 9/9/2. He has the One-Winged Angel. When Kenny Omega appears, each enemy player chooses a face-up character on their side, and Kenny Omega stuns those characters. So he gets to come down and just straight up clip somebody without having to do anything else. That alone, when I talk about wanting high drop characters that have instant and immediate board impact, this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Like, without a doubt, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. He also has the Elite. Any combat, pay yellow. If a character on your side is defending, cancel that attack. So we've seen this power before. The Phoenix, the A-Force Phoenix, had basically the same power. It had a different name, but it was pay yellow, cancel an attack. Yeah, that can be pretty good, especially if you can time it so they invest their combat pumps and then you throw the yellow from hand and it just blows out their entire. So you come down, kill their best dude. Well, no, wait, they get a pick, right? Yeah, so you're going to come down and kill their worst dude because the opposing player gets to pick. And then when they try to attack you, you throw a yellow from hand and cancel their combat after they invested their combat pumps. Feels pretty good. This guy, I feel like he does enough for a turn 7. I like the immediately coming into play, getting to stun something power. That's really strong. And the rest of the card is, I think, good enough. I think this could potentially, this reminds me of the Dual Maw Leviathan, which had a fine stat block and did like a really good thing when it came into play, and that's all play in a lot of decks. I think this guy could see play outside of his team, even if you're not running yellows, just because the ability to clean up the board a little bit when you come to play can be so valuable, especially if you're playing against somebody who has like little annoying support characters in the back. Okay, so let's look at some plot twists. So we have Dark, a heal plot twist. Choose a character on your side. It gets +2 and stealth. I've been paying green for this +2 plus. I mean, Primeval is pay a green, 3 attack or whatever it is, and stealth. This is +2/+2 and stealth. Uh, Again, I'm not a huge fan of card combat-based cards that force me to play them in the main phase, but I get that if you want to give somebody stealth, you have to be able to play this before the combat is declared, or else the combat couldn't be legal. So this kind of has to be a main phase plot twist, but that definitely makes the +2/+2 a little bit weaker compared to like you won't like her when she's angry, say. Although that you won't like her is a bad comparison because that puts counters on somebody. Yeah, this is a playable card, especially if you want to be able to get to the back row. Like even if you ignore the combat buff, just stealth. People have played Alter Ego, not even caring about the fact that it changes the name of the card just because it gives a character stealth. Okay, Heat. Choose a supporting character on your side. When it wins this combat, put a +1 counter on it. Then it strikes a character who wasn't in the combat. Uh, yeah, that's a card, man. I'm not a huge fan of these cards that are asking us to play it, like commit it to the combat, hoping that we're gonna win. It does send a flare up for your opponent to be like, this is a good time to really punish. Like they committed a plot twist, and I'm going to make that plot twist do nothing because I'm going to power up and be big enough that now they can't stun me. But if you get the payoff, if the risk gives you the reward, you get bigger, and then you get to kill something else that wasn't even in combat with you. That's good. Out of combat stuns are super valuable in versus. Rampage, choose a character on your side to get +3/+3, and after the combat resolves, put a -1 counter on it. So that +3/+3 only lasts for the combat, and afterwards, you're a little sore, you're a little tuckered out, and you get a -1. Yeah, this is totally fine. You use this to push through an attack when you really need it, and then just accept the -1 counter as part of the cost of doing business to get a great plot twist like +3/+3. How many +3/+3 plot twists have we seen over the course of Versus? Not a whole lot of them, and they're all pretty impactful. So yeah, I think that's definitely a playable card. We have the chair. I'm going to go through the rest of these locations here real quick just to make sure there aren't any other cards hiding in weird spots because my box apparently was collated very strangely. The chair is one of a kind, cold hard steel. Any combat, pay a green. If this is a melee combat, the equipped character gets +6/+6, and you can use this any number of times per turn. So it takes a little bit of setup, and then your character becomes gigantic. If they catch you without any greens, it does nothing. So there is some risk in equipping this to a character if your opponent happens to be on Illustrated and they turn all your locations face down. Now you just wasted a card, does nothing. But if you can get this down, attack with the guy, get a combat one that you shouldn't have gotten one, and then when they try to clear this off by attacking you next turn, you pay a green again, and you're able to stuff an attack and maybe stun their dude back. There's certainly places where this is going to look good. There's also going to be times where it's going to look bad, where you're going to draw this and you're not going to see your greens for the whole game. And it's just a dead card. So that happens. Here at the end, there's the heal teams, wild location. Overall, so what do we think about AEW as a box? So most of the cards in here, I think, have more to be excited about than to crap on. There were a few cards that I was pretty unimpressed with. There were some main characters that I thought were going to struggle a little more than others. But overall, even the cards that I'm not super excited about, they're at least playable. They're like that 5/5 guy. Where is he? The Eddie Kingston. So I think this guy is kind of emblematic of what my overall approach to this set has been. This guy is a perfectly fine card. He's a 4-cost 5/5/2. He can get up to 8/8, so he can do stuff that's relevant, but it's not that flashy. It's not that exciting. It's not that game breaking or unique. We've seen stuff like this in a lot of other places. And I kind of, overall, that's how I feel like where we landed with AEW. I would maybe compare this box to like the Civil War box. I think this box was made with the intent of it being really accessible for players who have not played Versus before. This was a new player acquisition box, and to that end, I think we can call it a mega success. We've seen more activity in the Facebook, more people joining the Discord. The fact that this set was so hard to get for a while after Gen Con, the demand was huge, and the new player influx is undeniable. So if the goal of this box was to put Versus in front of more eyes than had ever previously looked at Versus, that is a smashing success. Now, if your goal with this box was to play with a bunch of, like, if you're looking for a Fantastic Four box, that's not this one. That is not this box. This is a Civil War box. This is a new player friendly, do perfectly fine. Some of the stuff is really exciting. I'm not trying to downplay the level of excitement about the mechanics, but this is not a box where Super Awesome Games, I think, took major chances. I don't think they pushed the envelope with stuff like there's no Wyatt Wingfoot in here. Again, if you're familiar enough with Versus to understand the difference between the Fantastic battles and the Civil War battles, you get exactly where I'm coming from. Fantastic was about doing something for the community that had been established. Yes, at the time when Fantastic was rolled out, it was introduced as kind of a new player friendly box, but it wasn't that. It did not end up being new player friendly, but it was a fantastic, pardon the pun, box for us established players who had been missing the FF characters, Doctor Doom, Galactus, Silver Surfer, the whole family. For those of us who have been missing those characters in new verses, particularly those of us who remember those characters from old verses where they had such a big impact, being able to sink our teeth into that Fantastic Battles box was amazing. but it's a terrible place for a new player to start because it's so complicated and there's weird cards in there and you needed stuff from other boxes and so on and so on. Civil War, on the other hand, flipped that script and they gave us cards that I think are mechanically interesting enough to get established players like myself excited, source material that I really, really cared about, but they weren't going for the flashy, over the top, confusing, crazy stuff like Franklin Richards or Legion or White Wingfoot is my favorite example in this arena, where you're really kind of bending the player's grasp of the rules and shoehorning it into this strange mechanic. This box is not doing that. This is a Civil War box. This is a new player friendly, new player acquisition, get new eyes into the game type of versus box. And while that isn't necessarily, I'm not the target, the bullseye on that target, there's still plenty of stuff in here that I'm very excited to play with. I can't wait to put Sting into my Billy Butcher deck, for example. So overall, my feelings about AEW are two very weird thumbs up. I think it's very positive. I'm super happy that this made it to our game, even though I still reserve the right to talk about how weird it is. It's such a weird fit. But the proof is in the pudding. I cannot imagine the one metric I don't have to measure the game by is actual like sales. I don't know how profitable this was. I don't know what the licensing fee is to AEW to be able to put these images on the cards. So I hope, given the metrics I can see, the places where I can gauge the success of this box, like new players joining the community, whether it's Discord or Facebook, activity, even other groups that I'm a part of. My Star Wars Discord had people in it talking about AEW and wanting to learn verses just because of this property. So, assuming that whatever licensing fee Upper Deck had to pay to AEW to be able to make these cards, that falls within the same kind of general ballpark as what we're doing with Marvel, I have to assume that this success was more, that this box was more of a financial success than some of the other expansions that we've seen, because the activity around it, the players talking about buying it that I know for a fact have never bought a box of verses before, all of that is up from what I generally expect. So at the end of the day, as weird as it is, as much as it makes me giggle to myself to say some of these names, I think AEW has to be considered a smashing success and a welcome new addition to my favorite card game. And with that, I think I've concluded my unboxing video and lengthy ramble, and we will call it there. So until next time, go win some games.